to the blood-sucking lawyer part here. Yeah, by this point, Roddenberry kind of surrounded himself with a new inner circle thing. And it consisted mainly of Richard Arnold, his errand boy, really. One thing Roddenberry liked to do, instead of giving raises, he would give out titles. Really wouldn't pay much more, but it sounded much more important. But really, Richard Arnold, he's a nice guy. I had no problems with him. I had correspondence going with him back in the late 80s, early 90s, during Next Gen was first starting off and through when he just got fired. But I think he did kind of overestimate his importance of the whole thing. And Susan Sackett, nice lady, but again, we all know the story on that. So, and good representative of the show. She did her part more than anything. Yeah, enough on that. I don't want to get into that. But the chief villain is the blood-sucking lawyer, Leonard Mazeless. Less said of him, the better. But we got to say something about it, because if you want to talk about why things went weird with Next Gen first season, there you go. Because I guess in the under the pretense of looking out for Gene's best interest, he would stick his nose into things he had no business sticking his nose into. Because the lawyer has no reason to be giving notes on scripts or going through people's offices or bad-mouthing people who Gene had known for 30-some years, some cases, and just trying to keep the old band out. Well, there was a little more of the self-serving, blood-sucking lawyer type. And there's a real big thing that, like David Gerald says, it's not good. You should always speak good of the dead. So his response is, Leonard Mazeless is dead. Good. I mean, he just, once he was finally ejected from the set, never to return, things started to stabilize. Because finally saner heads were to prevail. And also, I don't know if I mentioned this in the last one, but Gene, he knew things were falling apart with him personally. His mind, he knew, he had to know he was not all there anymore. Which is why he didn't want to come back in the first place, right? So, but to protect the love child, the brainchild, he had to come back, at least get it on the right path and get somebody in charge for and after he was incapacitated at best and gone. He would keep it on the even keel and maintain the integrity. And that's where Rick Berman came in. He was a studio guy. The studio brought him in to basically run herd on him, I think. And Gene probably thought, let's turn him to the dark side. He's a nice guy. He can be turned. You can put him in charge and he'll maintain the course. So that's how that'll happen. And you can argue that when Gene was gone, he held a little too firmly to the course. But as it is, that's the plan Gene came up with. That's the one he went with, and it seemed to work for the most part. And again, contrary to popular, DS9 did have some input from Gene, because it was in development quite a while before it finally really hit it. And Gene was still around for the early days, and he was able to offer his thoughts on it and point out what would work, what would be a good idea, what would work on it. So he gave his thoughts on what he could. He was still there. So they had some input from him on it. But yeah, we finally got the producers in there who knew what they're doing, starting with Rick Berman, who would run her on this, and when Maurice Hurley left too, he was trying to do things the right way, and he didn't. And again, it's one of those cases where a producer who really had no business with the genre in the first place, because he was not into sci-fi. He thought Gene's ideas were total, in his words, total wackadoo stuff. It makes me wonder why. It must have been a hell of a paycheck, because why he stuck around as long as he did, I don't know. And apparently his idea, the idea of the Borg, whatever. I never liked the Borg. I know because I got big over here and stuff the doll. Once in a while it's fine, but after a while it's enough already. Because you use it too often, you defang them, because the guys have to come out on top, and you come out doing that. Why are these guys a threat in the first place? But yeah. Next Gen's going on, and keep in mind also the movies are still going to this point too. And I think it's rather telling because, Gene was still being pretty much ignored with the movies, but now that he had Next Gen going, now he had some clout and he had some say in things. And I think it's remarkable that one of the first things, when I had a chance to actually directly comment on, Spock's backstory a little bit, back while he was, bringing back Sarek. In the opening log entry, they make a very point of Perrin, who, quote, like Sarek's first wife, is human. That one half a line invalidates a big chunk of the backstory for Star Trek V. And there's various reasons. One, you can think because it was a stupid movie and needs to be invalidated. But also, apparently Gene had an idea of the Enterprise meeting God and was summarily shot down. So he took it kind of personally that they would go ahead with the same idea when Shatner proposed it. And frankly, they should have shot it down then too, because it's still a stupid idea. Harv Bennett, and sum it up, whether or not anyone's going to want to watch this, you break it down into the TV Guide synopsis, back when they used to do this sort of thing, and see, tonight on Star Trek, the Enterprise meets God. You're setting yourself up for disappointment, because either you're going to portray God as something totally inadequate in somebody's mind, or it's not going to be God, which is the more obvious one. So you're already setting yourself up for it. It's not going to be what it says it is. Which means it's a bad idea to begin with. Don't even do it. So they should have gone with the other idea, which is Fountain of Youth, which actually Star Trek had done before in multiple ways. Most notably with the Next Gen's too short a season, but other ways too. The Omega Glory, which was Roddenberry's script, he kept talking about a Fountain of Youth thing. And that's something that has a little more teeth to it and can work in a more science fiction environment. And also would have worked better with because one of the things that kind of had to cause problems with Star Trek V is the studio mandate that it be funny. Because Star Trek 4 works so well with all the humor, and of course studio heads have the imagination of goldfish. So he preaches the idea of the Enterprise going on this epic journey to meet God, and the first thing they say is, "Can you make it funny?" Okay, Shatner wanted to be a team player, so they tried to work some humor in there, and we all know how that worked out. But during all that, once they decided to bring in Sarek, he had this chance to put a torpedo on the side of that one. But again, by that point, Gene is showing up once in a while to justify his paycheck, but he's Berman and Piller are running things by now. And you got Ron Moore in there, and I think Ira Steven Behr he was in there a little bit. He wasn't much there on Next Gen. He really came to the fore in DS9. But things are chugging along. Next Gen is, at this point, the Star Trek franchise is bringing in $1 billion a year to Paramount. It really is coming their crown jewel. And it's bringing in mega bucks. Which is why everyone's sort of surprised when, one, I think it was around season 5 or so when Roddenberry died. And now it was one of those cases of he was pretty ill. And there had been a big Star Trek celebration. I think it was like 25th anniversary of the 91, when a big thing at I think it was the Lady, some big theater downtown, I forget which one. And that was kind of Roddenberry's last big public appearance, and he was in a wheelchair by this point. But he forced himself to stand up for the crowd, and he wrote his video this with Rod helping him up, or helping him stand up, and he very, very heartfelt thank you to the fans, because it's what it's all about. And it wasn't long after that he died. And at that point now, it's a matter of carrying on Roddenberry's legacy. And here's where Rick Berman kind of tightens the reins a bit, because he didn't believe in the philosophy that this is what Gene wanted, this is what the show is structured around, we're going to hold to it. And then they continued on the last few seasons of Next Gen. But also by this point, DS9 is starting to fall. And again, Gene was around for the early development of it, where they're still brainstorming of what we're going to do here. So I don't know specifics of how much he had, or whether he pointed the direction of a space station, or said you should do this and this. This is something to look into, and this is something to explore. But he did have some say in how early on. So it's done without Roddenberry had a few things to say in that. But that was the first time they started one without his direct involvement actually there, giving a send off. So it's very much as carrying on the legacy of that. But also one of the things that made DS9 special was the fact that not long after third season, or actually right after the Next Gen folded, they immediately went right towards doing Voyager. The only thing left really, but they reworked 10 forward a bit. They kept the 6 bay for the most part, but the bridge was gone. They built, and Voyager's bridge was built on its bridge. So that's why they felt no problem in tearing the bejesus out of the second generations, because they knew if they were going to tear it down anyway, so might as well blow the hell up. But Voyager, they started pushing it, and again, a lot of some of the things they set up in DS9 with the Maquis, so that they can bring in conflict from outside and have the guys. But eventually, it turned into Next Gen Light. The squabbles were quickly forgotten. The only way you could tell the Maquis from the regular Starfleet was the pins on the collar. But even then, they still tried to hold true to the thing. And then some of it worked, some of it didn't. Some of it got downright silly. Because, again, these guys have been working on this stuff now for several years now. And they're trying hard not to blatantly repeat what they did on Next Gen. But it's also something to note. Around this, you start to figure out who are the hardcore Star Trek fans among the staff, and who are the ones who want to do weird stuff, and not necessarily beholden to the original stuff. The hardcore old-time fans are on DS9. And actually, there's stuff they can do. And also, they were left alone much, because Berman's over across the lot working on Voyager, so he's letting DS9 do what they want, for the most part. With a little bit of rain pulling here and there. But for the most part, he's letting them run the show they're on. He's focusing on Voyager. Because there's a lot riding on this one. Because this is when the old dream that Barry Diller had with the Paramount Network to launch Phase 2, they're going to try it again, this time with Voyager. Remember UPN? That's what happened here. Try to fulfill that little prophecy. And first time out, it worked. Because Voyager, and it beat Monday Night Football when it was still at its height on ABC. And most shows would avoid Monday Night Football. That was a big Monday night game. Other networks would schedule reruns. So credit UPN for taking it on, and they debuted Voyager Monday night up against that, and they won the night. Unfortunately, the quality of the show didn't hold up because and they started sliding soon afterwards. They started, this isn't as good as showing up, and that's a big thing of why with Nemesis, same sort of principle holds in kind of the reverse thing, because the interest was there. They showed up with you. Nemesis, though, no, the interest wasn't there. It didn't even, in the slang term, it didn't even open. Other studios moved their movies away from that date to let Star Trek have its opening weekend and beat the crap out of it, and then they'll take it. Well, it got beaten out by Jennifer Lopez rom-com Made in Manhattan. It didn't even make $19 million that weekend. That showed a lot of, but that's coming up later, really, because of Enterprise. But I'm not sure franchise fatigue was the word. It wasn't tired of the franchise, it's tired of bad stuff. Because after suffering through Voyager, because DS9 ended a few years earlier, so they stuck with Voyager for a while, and then the first couple seasons of Enterprise. And the fans were getting more and more ticked off, and it was pretty clear that they were not listening. production were not listening to the fans like they used to, or at least they thought they listened to. Because it's debatable how much Roddenberry actually listened to, how much he was paid lip service, but it was clear they weren't listening. They were starting to openly say that we were a pain in the butt and just doing things that literally tick us off as a plan. Well, here comes Nemesis. And here's where the fans really have a chance to basically vote with their wallets and not show up. Now, the fact that Nemesis also stunk on ice did nothing, because then they didn't show up next week either. Those that did go out, don't bother. It's a lousy movie. And it really solidified the stinking thing. Because every other movie, even Star Trek V won the weekend that it opened. And this kind of goes back to my video with Campia. It's like, the fans are still there and they're still in force. But you have to, show that, there's something worth coming out to. They're not just going to blindly show up. But we got Nemesis. And I think, it did have the effect on the Enterprise at least when Nemesis blew up. And somebody was at least comparing things to realize that, time to shape up, guys. And you got season 3 coming around and things. And you changed showrunners to season 4, and it finally embraced its role as a prequel. And a lot of people consider season 4 when they finally figured out what they were doing. Unfortunately, the damage has already been done. And also complicating things was CW and UPN had been merged into, it was WB and UPN merged into the CW. CBS was now calling the shots. Means, hello, Les Moonves, not a clue about sci-fi. They were lucky they got the 4th season to wrap things up. At least have one last chance to win an audience. But the landscape had changed underneath them. They didn't have the land of themselves anymore. And I think if they had moved Enterprise over to CBS proper, they might have actually done something. But the coverage wasn't quite there from UPN. So, not much you can do on that front. But at least, they kind of went out on it. Well, I'm about to say I know, but unfortunately the last episode was just the worst one of the entire franchise, because it just... Even Berman and Braga have apologized for that one. It was well-intentioned, but very horribly done. Which sets the stage for JJ. Coming off of all this, you get into this, and then some dim bulb at the front office. We need a total change, and they bring in J.J. Abrams, Wunderkind, who, he starts out with great ideas, but then he runs off to do something else because apparently he has the attention span of a gerbil. That's one of the legacies that people don't want to talk about with his work, like Alias. Yeah, great setup. Lost. Yeah, intriguing. And even, but when it comes to wrapping things up and trying to close out the deal, he tends to fall apart. He's got to make episode 9 very interesting. Again, thankfully, he's not the ultimate driving force. He's got people around him who know how to do this thing. So hopefully episode 9 will properly conclude things. And he's just, again, hired hand. He's there for his skill as a director, and at one point do what he's told, and undo the damage done with The Last Jedi. But you got what with JJ Trick. You got his bright idea to try and make it more like Star Wars, and you find out in practice why that was never a good idea. Anybody have a mind, whenever they brought it up, it needs to be more like Star Wars. No, it doesn't. Star Wars is a space opera, a space fantasy, and Star Trek at least was moderately still considered science fiction. It's kind of the McDonald's of science fiction. These ladies vegetable. Well, sir, and it's not really denigrating things. It's not the Foundation trilogy or Rendezvous with Rama. It is, it is what it is. Going back, the original idea. Remember, the original state of sci-fi at the time Star Trek came along was the Irwin Allen stuff. Not particularly challenging, certainly not anything thought-provoking beyond, look at the weird creature. oh my God, it's a talking carrot. You know, isn't Dr. Smith dastardly? You know, oh, look at the weird robot. What's with the smart aleck kid? Who'd take him along on the trip? No, trying to actually tell grown-up stories to an intelligent audience. Because one thing has been lost rather badly, I think, really, is they used to have a saying on the original series, you know, Offices. There is an intelligent life form on the other side of that television show. Now it's been replaced by these idiots will eat anything as long as the Star Trek label on it. Don't worry about it. Just slap together. And you can tell because it's like why all of us old timers are fighting mad over Discovery, and why we grumbled about why. And even go back to when they started the movies, and why are you changing things around for? You know? And yeah, up until that point, when it's up to like Voyager. It was just, people don't like change, and they're going to complain when things are changed around for no real reason. But that doesn't mean that all grumbles are invalid there, because when it got to Enterprise, it's still, a case of, grumbling for the sake of grumbling, I'll admit that. But they also violate a lot of long-standing fan assumptions. But and let's be honest about that one. They were assumptions. That nothing very little was chiseled in stone regarding that era. I still think they should have cast somebody, but I think somebody else is Zephyr Cochrane. But by that point, they'd already been hammered out that James Cromwell. That mistake should have been. That shouldn't have happened when they did First Contact again. They could have gotten George Clooney, would have been perfect for them, and also affordable at that point too. But that's another issue. Well, I'm still saying. So we get into the next gen movies. Crashed and burned with Nemesis. Voyager limped across the line. Enterprise got cut short. And everyone's considered, the franchise is dead. No, really. You just got a pissed off fan base who's got tired of supporting crap for the most part. At least, and like I said, Enterprise at least kind of ended mostly on an upward tick, with the exception of the last episode. And then it's a matter of, okay, what do we do with it now? Apparently, CBS now is sitting, Viacom. The split hadn't happened just yet. Well, no. By the time we start getting into the the JJ trip thing, Viacom had split things up. All the movie stuff going to Paramount, all the TV stuff going to CBS, which put Star Trek in a very strange position because it was both. So the way it worked out is CBS had all the TV materials, and Paramount had the movie part. But the thing is, the CBS stuff also encroached on the movie stuff. So what Paramount retained ownership of on the movie side was distribution rights to the first 10 movies. But they couldn't do anything based on those first 10 movies. If they wanted to do a Star Trek thing, they had to do something on their, that would be separate from it. Now, if they had admitted this at the time, I think the reception for JJ and them would have been a little better. But as it is, I'm trying to distract myself over here. You're telling me to wrap it up and you're telling me other things. Okay.
Yeah.
But they kept playing this thing. We're just, it's got to change because times have changed. No, they haven't. As many fan films have pointed out, you can do those original designs with modern techniques and modern camera work, and they still look fine. On Enterprise itself, they did the original sets, and they look great. Okay, and that was a show shot in HD, okay, from the get-go. So there's nothing wrong with those designs, nothing wrong with the ship design. They work perfectly well today, here and now. So don't even try that. You got to change designs. But at least with JJ, they came up with this alternate timeline gimmick, and okay, fine. At least you can take it on its own merits. Like it, hate it, I hate it. But
well, we still got Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, so you got Chris. Hemsworth was already, he would have been there anyway through a Star Trek. But which brings us all down to Discovery. Why it's a disaster. because it flies in the face of everything we've just gone through in the past hour and a half now.
It's rubbish.
It doesn't match up. It's not catering to an intelligent audience. It's catering to morons. And it's apparently written by people who aren't that bright either, because these people have no practical experience in the real world, apparently, of how strategies are done, how military strategy works. And thinking about, again, I go back to the thing of the opening bit where the battle starts stupidly. Everyone's acting like an idiot. And they're not even given the respect of the original, because it's supposed to be, they keep saying, it's prime timeline, it's prime, and they give designs that don't fit anywhere near prime. They're given technology far in excess of it. Now we're just supposed to swallow it. Again, there is an intelligent life form on the other side of the television tube, and you're insulting it with every time you do something like this, because they get the designers think they're so damn smug. We couldn't go back to original designs; they'd look stupid. Prove it. I got evidence to the contrary with a recent show using those original designs. So yeah, it's not just that it's just a stupid show, that it's badly written and badly thought out. It's that it's also the arrogance of the people who are making it. Because you cannot be a self-respecting fan and take this kind of crap all over without getting some providing some blowback. So beyond just saying that the show's badly written, and the designs are idiotic, and you guys are arrogant assholes for trying to sell it to us and insulting us because we don't buy it. And that, friends, is why we fight. And why it's not the same as when people grumble about the design of the Enterprise D or they're changing the Klingons for the first movie. This is very, very different. Partly because they are, by putting it, between the cage and Where No One's Gone Before, you're sticking this thing right in the middle of the original series, and it does not fit. And they're really not even trying to make it fit. There has been no effort whatsoever to make this thing even close to it. You're getting like half-assed attempts trying to now make original series uniform. No, they're just doing the colors different. They're still not the original series uniforms. They're not even for that period because the rank stripes are all off that thing. And they're not even bothering to do the least bit of research to confirm this. They're just doing, that's the original series now. Don't you like it? No, because they're still not original series. You're still not matching up, and I can guarantee you that ship is still way too damn big. Because they're not, again, besides not trying to match up, they're not taking into account what this affects everything else on the thing, because it's now a very intricately tied in history. And you're doing a Star Trek show like this, you've got to think of it as a period piece now. The history is pretty well laid out, and this is where, the canon is restrictive. Well, tough. You want to do a Western? Guess what? You're not going to get away with a Harley-Davidson motorcycle and a machine gun on the back of a horse, okay? You got to plot out, okay, what year is it? What was available? What did a typical six-shooter look like? What were the styles then? What can you get, And you see what you can get away with, but if someone didn't invent this gun until 1875 and it shows in 1869, guess what? You ain't getting that gun.
You might have a problem.
What? I'm not gonna. But anyway, that's pretty much that should bring everyone up to speed into the state of Star Trek, how we got here, and where we're going. Hopefully, where we're going from this point. Because the edict now apparently is to try and win back us old fogies, and that's where apparently the idea of throwing the Enterprise and bringing Pike and Spock and all that, and get them in uniforms that look more like the original. It's a half-assed effort. It's not going to work. Not from this score, and I'm pretty sure everyone else who's on this side is going to be the same thing. Nice try, no cigar. Reboot this thing again and try again in another year or so. So, PayPal, Patreon down below. We'll talk to you later.